Hello, everyone. My name is Chana Saminathan, and I'm a specialist solutions architect working on IoT and robotics at Amazon Web Services. I'm really happy to be here to talk to you today about AWS IoT ExpressLink and how you can accelerate your IoT hardware development with it. Let's get started. So today I'll talk to you about what some of our customers are doing with IoT in general, talk about what some of the market challenges are with creating a new connected product or device, provide an introduction to AWS IoT ExpressLink, explain the key values and capabilities, and show what some of the customer impact is and some of the use cases for AWS IoT ExpressLink, and finally, how to get started with our partner modules for AWS IoT ExpressLink. Now, our customers are solving problems and transforming literally every industry around the world, like Vizio, who connects millions of TVs with AWS IoT and Amazon Alexa. You have Deutsche Bahn, the German train operator that's gathering insights about their trains with AWS IoT. LG Electronics relaunched their IoT platform and now saves over 80% in development costs with AWS IoT. You have Module and ProGlove that's creating IoT-based products to enhance worker safety. Trader Grills, who's using IoT to create a very engaging ecosystem of grilling partners, recipes, providing tools and tips. VW is on a very fascinating multi-year transformation connecting various facets of their business for improved quality, supply chain resilience, and amongst a long list of operational efficiencies that they're gaining. Every time I see this chart, I think of how I use these different products from these companies on a daily basis. So what are customers doing with AWS IoT? Well, for optimizing manufacturing, Fender uses computer vision and advanced IoT and AI ML to improve instrument production and wood grain analysis. For remotely monitoring patient healthcare, Philips has many health care devices which use IoT. For tracking inventory levels and managing their warehouse operations, John Deere uses certain IoT and ML services to help with manufacturing. Connecting home, buildings, and cities are some of the largest segments for IoT and even ExpressLink. For growing healthier crops with greater efficiencies, a very simple example these days is John Deere, who's using AI/ML and automation to improve crop production. And another similarly fascinating example is by Bayer, who's radically closing the loop between growers and scientists for better seed production. And for managing energy resources, we have a lot of companies that are managing renewable resources using IoT at the edge today. For transforming transportation, you have companies like VW, BlackBerry Elixir, Karma, and they're all doing different things with IoT and the data ingestion from those vehicles. And finally, to enhance safety, Module and Wisecam is providing many different products for the end users and the consumers themselves. So how can you quickly build intelligent devices and securely connect them to AWS IoT? And that's the question a lot of customers are coming at and asking us to do that. So let's jump into that by talking about what we have seen as some of the common customer challenges. So what are some of the customer challenges? Well, connecting devices to the cloud is hard, but at AWS, we're very customer obsessed with trying to make it easier for our customers. IoT requires very specialized knowledge, which are normally not in-house at all of our customer sites. Most customers have experts in their own field and to work on their own product. And it usually involves a large development effort, which has nothing to do with your application or your product. You have to deal with networking and security, which are essential for a secure connection, but many customers struggle with that. Mistakes happen, right? We don't want dead devices which are going to be inaccessible. So I'll explain about that a little bit as we go along. But at the end, once you develop a product, once you produce it, scaling becomes hard if it's not done correctly. And if it's one thing that we do really well at AWS, is to scale. And AWS makes it very easy to securely connect virtually any device to the cloud. You have very small devices running the free RTOS, the real-time operating system, communicating with the C SDK. You have microprocessors running the AWS IoT Greengrass service. Greengrass has components for handling different types of application. You can also deploy compute modules within Greengrass, such as Lambda. Greengrass is also an edge gateway that fronts the microcontrollers and even AWS IoT ExpressLink modules for connectivity. And then you have the AWS IoT Express modules themselves, which are developed and offered by partners such as Espressif, Infineon, and u-blox to start with, and we'll continue to add more as we go along. And lastly, you have the ability to use our device SDK or device client to manage and communicate from your specific device to the AWS cloud and IoT services. The AWS IoT Device SDK includes open source libraries, developer guides with samples, and porting guides so that you can build innovative IoT products or solutions on your choice of hardware platforms. These SDKs help you to connect your IoT devices to AWS IoT using either MQTT protocols or the WebSockets protocols themselves. And finally, the AWS IoT device client provides code to help your device to get connected to AWS IoT, provide maybe some fleet level provisioning tasks to support the device's security policies, to connect using secure tunneling, and to process the different jobs on your device itself. And you can install this software on your device to handle these routine device tasks so you can really focus on your application itself and not worrying about the other things that have to do with devices itself. So now when we talk about the solution itself, we have to talk about the solutions with ExpressLink and without ExpressLink. So if you look on the left side here, without AWS IoT ExpressLink, you have to focus on so many other things in addition to the application itself. In this diagram, we can compare and contrast between the with and the without. So the IoT library is going to be used for communicating messages to and from the cloud. You have the radio library that takes care of the wireless aspects, the connections itself. You have hardware security, which enables you to use the hardware security keys and the certificate management on the hardware itself. And finally, the wireless module needs to be integrated into the overall hardware to communicate with the other pieces as you go along. And to deploy new IoT service to your product, you're going to need to take care of each of these different pieces independently. And if you notice, everything I just mentioned has nothing to do with your product or your application piece. You have to focus on so many other things that your application really doesn't get the attention that it may need. From our perspective, we want you to focus on the application and make that application or product be the best that it can be. Now, with the AWS IoT ExpressLink, all these extra pieces are offloaded so that you can only focus on the application itself. You can focus on your application and let AWS IoT ExpressLink focus on the other parts. Now, modules that use AWS IoT ExpressLink makes it faster and easier for developers of all skill levels to securely connect almost any device to the cloud and seamlessly integrate with AWS IoT services, including AWS IoT Core. Every module with AWS IoT ExpressLink comes with pre-provisioned, with a unique identifier and a certificate to simplify the development and the deployment at scale. The modules can be onboarded in a user account using a number of common methods, and it makes it very easy to support what we call late binding onboarding mechanisms to increase that flexibility and to reduce the manufacturing time and the cost. And moreover, with AWS Device Defender, as I mentioned, you can natively monitor your device's health. You can manage your fleets at scale with AWS IoT device management also. So what are some of the benefits of AWS IoT ExpressLink? Well, it's quick, so you can offload the networking and the encryption. It's easy. Modules can integrate and work with all the AWS services through AWS IoT Core. It's secure. Devices are protected from remote attacks. You can manage the whole fleet of IoT devices from within AWS itself, and the security complexity of certificate handling and management are not necessary with the pre-provisioned certificates that I mentioned earlier. So it's quick. Three wires is all it takes to communicate with the cloud. You have the transmit, you have the receive, and the ground. The power is always implied there. So there's also the ability to have interrupts in wake states and reset states within your app if that's needed. AWS IoT ExpressLink is simple to run. Basically, 10 lines of code is all it takes for basic communication. It uses tried and true AT commands. Most of the time, it's just a handful that are used, like connect, send, subscribe, and get. There's about a dozen different commands, but these four are the main ones that you use, where you connect to the device itself, you send some information, you subscribe to a topic, and then you get information that you're subscribed to. Today, the Wi-Fi and cellular LTE modules are available with NB-IoT, which is narrowband IoT, and LoRaWAN coming soon. So here's some pseudocode, the 10 lines of code that I mentioned. Basically, you connect to the device, then the sensors are going to get some data. So in this specific case, you have maybe a sensor A that gets some data, formats the message, and then sends it. That's it. Then you wait for some period of time, and then you do it again, if that's what your application is meant to do. It's pretty straightforward that way. AWS IoT ExpressLink is secure, so the device is secure out of the box. This hardware has a serial number which can be verified. There are secure enclaves and secret storage locations on some of the modules. The connection is going to be mutually authenticated, and the communication is encrypted end to end. There could be, no type of interrupts or anything like that. Which, when the device is booting up, it has a secure boot that cannot be interrupted in any way. It can be updated over the air. So what that means is you can have the host processor product can be updated over the air as well as the firmware itself. So if your application has some kind of configuration files, maybe has some information that needs to be updated, the host processor can also be updated there. And there's always a built-in support for AWS Device Defender, as I mentioned. Finally, you could deploy and manage AWS IoT at scale. All devices come pre-provisioned with the birth certificate, and they're already placed in a lobby, as we call it. And it supports a late binding mechanism, so you can manufacture the products, and then you could tie the device to an account at the time of the activation. The whole fleet can be managed through AWS services for fleet health and security. Now, for the IP protection, the manufacturing, the flexibility, and savings, I'm not going to go through all these steps, but at a high level, what this is showing are the steps that a company would need to take to develop their own product and to get a contract manufacturer to load their firmware and hardware onto the devices itself. The one piece of heavy lifting which we have eliminated with AWS IoT ExpressLink is the pre-provisioning of the certificates and being able to manage the devices without leaving something to chance with the contract manufacturer. With this method, customers can create their products and get it out to market very quickly. They don't have to worry about certificates expiring. They don't need to worry about thousands of devices becoming unusable if there's some kind of mismatch between the certificate and the product identifier itself. And this has happened. It's happened to customers, and it's not a good experience as they would need to go back and redo part of their manufacturing process by going back and reassembling the product itself. By us handling the steps, it makes it much easier for everyone. So what are the impacts to the customer? Well, IoT devices can be built in days or weeks. Security is within the product from day one. You can connect any embedded service, any embedded device to the cloud. Even legacy non-connected devices can now be connected to the cloud. This way, you can use your valuable resources on your own product application and even innovate more. So you can build your application as best as you can and not struggle with the connectivity and such that are problems to our customers trying to develop a new IoT product. And finally, you can deploy your application securely with AWS IoT services and all the over 200 other services that we provide. So what are some of the top use cases? Well, we've seen many different use cases in the IoT space at AWS, and here are some which we have seen that have great interest for AWS IoT ExpressLink. Simply connected appliances like household appliances, handheld devices, really smart everything. We've seen industrial equipment interest for predictive maintenance, for failure reporting, asset tracking for safety, accounting, and regular monitoring. We have construction and tool companies working with us for managing and controlling their assets. We have agricultural companies, similar, to industrial equipment, the measurement of rain, temperature, humidity, etc., whatever they want to report on. We have medical equipment for time of use when maybe a certain device needs a service to be in compliance of those devices themselves, and many other applications with different constrained devices. So we have 3 partners and 4 different modules. Here are the current partners we're working with. They're all leaders in their space. All 3 provide Wi-Fi modules, and u-blox today also provides a cellular module. On the right side are the actual names of the AWS IoT ExpressLink modules for each particular vendor, and this list is going to be growing very soon. Here are the evaluation kits which each of these different vendors offer. They're available today for purchase. Again, 3 Wi-Fi modules and 1 cellular modules. As you can see, each partner has created a slightly different development kit that form factor. However, each module was created to the same specification as defined by AWS. Here's a kit example. I wanted to show the different pieces which go in to make a full development kit. In this case, this kit is from Infineon. There's the IoT ExpressLink module on the right there that's shown. It fits into an Arduino carrier board in the middle, and then that goes into the host processor on the left, the red board. So together, it looks like the above picture right above it, where it has the Infineon ExpressLink module going into the connector card and then to the host itself. So you have the AWS cloud connected into this device. You have the front end application to check maybe the temperature on the board. You can control the LED and check the brightness through some type of web app that's provided. So these are code samples provided to you, and you can be up and running within an hour. And this particular case, again, is from Infineon. Another example I wanted to show is the simple AT commands used. So these is again by Infineon, some basic code that's provided. You configure the Wi-Fi credentials, then you connect to the cloud, and once you are connected, you send some data. Then you are subscribing to a topic to get the messages, and you simply subscribe to that topic and you get the messages, and then do some action based on those messages. That's it. All right. So thank you very much for your time. That concludes the presentation. If you have any more questions or want to connect, please reach out to me at the following contacts. We'll be happy to connect with you and help you in your cloud journey, and more specifically, your IoT ExpressLink journey to the AWS IoT cloud. Thank you.